Welcome to the Midnight Chapter. Tonight, we unravel a tale not of a mindless monster, but of a love betrayed, a life stolen, and a vengeance that clawed its way back from the grave. So find yourself a quiet spot, settle down, as we share the story of the Dearg-Due, the tragic bride. They say she rises on certain nights, a woman of unearthly beauty, her lips as red as the blood she craves. She is the Dearg-Due, the red bloodsucker, Ireland's original vampire. A creature of the night, seeking vengeance on the men who wronged her. But to only see the monster is to miss the true tragedy. For before she was a demon, she was a woman. And her name was Áine. To understand her, we must travel back in time. While the story is ancient, passed down through generations, many place its heart in the 16th or 17th century, in the region of Waterford in Ireland's sunny southeast. It was a time of chieftains and clans, where a woman's life was often a currency for power, her happiness a secondary concern to her family's political alliances. And in this world, Áine was not just beautiful, she was radiant. Her laughter was said to be like the ringing of a bell, a sound that could make a hard day's labor feel lighter. She had a heart that was open and trusting, a spirit as wild and free as the Irish coast. She loved a local boy, a fisherman's son perhaps, or a farmer. Their love was a simple, honest thing, a promise of a future built on shared mornings and quiet evenings, a life of contentment, not conquest. But Áine's beauty was a curse. It was a thing to be captured, owned, and controlled. She caught the eye of a local chieftain, a man of immense wealth and bottomless greed. His fortress was of stone, but his heart was of colder stuff. He saw Áine not as a person, but as a prize, an object to solidify his status. Her family, likely terrified of his power or seduced by his gold, forced her to marry him. The wedding was not a celebration, it was a transaction. While the chieftain and his men drank and boasted, Áine sat in silence, a prisoner in a gown of fine silk. The girl who once ran through fields now walked the cold, echoing corridors of a fortress. The woman who was once loved for her spirit was now valued only for her face. Her husband's jealousy was a cage within a cage. He forbade her from seeing her family, her friends, and the boy whose memory was the only warmth she had left. They say she would spend her days staring from a single narrow window, watching the seasons change in a world she could no longer touch. The light in her eyes, that once reflected the sun on the sea, faded, replaced by a deep, still lake of sorrow. She wasn't just a bride, she was a living ghost in her own life. And in that gilded cage, away from all she loved, her heart didn't just break. It shattered. The world outside her window moved on. The sun rose and set. Seasons turned. But inside, for Áine, time had stopped. The lively girl who once ran through the meadows was gone, leaving only a hollowed-out shell. She took to her bed, not from any sickness a physician could name, but from a malady of the soul. She stopped eating. The light faded from her eyes, not in a flash, but like a candle slowly burning down to its base. On her final night, a storm raged outside, but her room was preternaturally still. She didn't fight it. There was no strength left for that. She simply let go. Her last breath was not a gasp, but a sigh, a soft, final release of a heart that could no longer bear its own weight. It was a sound of surrender to the grief that had been her only companion. And just like that, she was gone. The cruel chieftain had his trophy, but he had destroyed it. And in the silence she left behind, a new, terrible power was already stirring. For a heart broken by such injustice does not find peace. It foments a storm. Áine was laid to rest in a small churchyard near her family home, her husband on her death finally allowing her family to have her back. It seemed her suffering supposedly over. But a heart broken by such cruelty does not rest easily. The very earth she laid in withheld its peace and would not let her rest. A terrible power, born of injustice, filled her, and on the first anniversary of Áine's death, she rose. The chieftain awoke with a start. His room was cold, though the embers in the hearth still glowed. The wind. It sounded different. It didn't howl around the corners of the house. It seemed to whisper through the stone, carrying a sound that made his blood run cold, the faint, unmistakable sound of a woman's weeping. He sat up, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Who's there?" he demanded, his voice rough with sleep and a fear he wouldn't acknowledge. Silence. Then, a new sound. A slow, dragging footstep from the corridor outside his door. Not the brisk step of a servant, but a slow, shuffling gait, as if something was learning to walk again. Step, drag, step, drag. The door creaked open, not with a bang, but with the sigh of old hinges. And there, silhouetted in the doorway, stood a figure. The fine burial gown he had dressed her in was now tattered and stained with the dark soil of the grave. Her skin was pale as moonlit marble, and her dark hair hung in lank, damp strands. But it was her eyes that froze the scream in his throat. They were no longer the sorrowful pools he remembered. They were dark, bottomless, and held a cold, ancient intelligence. A knowing. "Áine?" he choked out, scrambling back against the headboard. A terrible, beautiful smile touched her blood-red lips. It did not reach her eyes. She glided towards the bed, her feet not seeming to touch the floor. The scent of grave earth and cold decay filled the room. He tried to shout, to move, but a paralyzing terror held him fast. He could only watch as she leaned over him, her shadow engulfing him. "You took everything from me," her voice was a whisper, but it echoed in his mind as if she were screaming. "My love, my life, my light." She bent closer, her lips nearly touching his ear. "Now I take everything from you." He felt a coldness seep into his skin where she touched him. It was not the cold of death, but the cold of absolute emptiness, of a soul utterly extinguished. He felt the very life, the warmth, the vitality being drawn out of him in a slow, painful pull. His body withered, his skin tightening over bone, his final breath a dry, rasping rattle in a desiccated throat. The Dearg-Due straightened up, standing over the shriveled husk that had been her tormentor. The ghost of her smile was gone. In its place was only a profound, eternal sorrow, and a hunger that had just been awakened. The only way to put the Dearg-Due to rest, they say, is to find her grave and pile stones upon it. A final act of weight to calm her tormented soul. It is a poignant end to a cycle of cruelty that never should have begun. And you know, the story of Áine reminds me how powerful a single story can be. It can haunt us, teach us, and stay with us for a lifetime. If you love discovering stories from all over the world, you need to check out our sponsor for tonight's video, Book Buddies. Book Buddies is a fantastic new and used online bookstore. They have a growing range of awesome books to choose from, perfect for those of us who live for a great story. They've offered Midnight Chapter listeners a special deal. Go to bookbuddies.co.uk and use the code MIDNIGHT15 to get 15% off your first order. That's Midnight15 at bookbuddies.co.uk to start your next reading adventure. Thank you, Book Buddies, for sponsoring tonight's tale. So, the next time you hear a tale of a vengeful spirit, a woman wronged, remember Áine. Remember the tragic bride. For centuries, stories like hers have been whispered. They are more than just ghost stories. They are echoes. Echoes of a time when a woman's life was not always her own, when her future could be bargained away like a piece on a chessboard, her heart just another currency in a transaction of power and property. Áine's story is one of countless others, a dark thread woven through the tapestry of history. She is a symbol of the spirit that is crushed, the voice that is silenced, the autonomy that is stolen. Her vengeance is a fantasy, a supernatural reckoning for a very real, human injustice that has been repeated for generations. But to remember her only as a monster is to miss the point entirely. She is a permanent reminder, a warning carved not in stone, but in the very soul of folklore itself. She reminds us that cruelty has consequences, that the wounds inflicted by greed and the destruction of a pure heart can ripple through time, creating shadows that never truly fade. Áine's story is one of countless others, a dark thread woven through the tapestry of history. She is a symbol of the spirit that is crushed, the voice that is silenced, the autonomy that is stolen. Her vengeance is a fantasy, a supernatural reckoning for a very real, human injustice that has been repeated for generations. But to remember her only as a monster is to miss the point entirely. She is a permanent reminder. A warning carved not in stone, but in the very soul of folklore itself. She reminds us that cruelty has consequences, that the wounds inflicted by greed and the destruction of a pure heart can ripple through time, creating shadows that never truly fade. The true horror is not the vampire who rises from the grave. The true horror is the world that created her. Let her story be a lesson in empathy, a call to see the humanity in others, to reject the cruelty that would treat any person as a possession. Let us remember Áine, not with fear, but with a promise to be better. Thank you for listening to this dark chapter. May the stories we share not only send a shiver down your spine, but also open your heart. If you have enjoyed tonight's tale and would like to hear more stories, do subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Until next time.